Welcome to Mommispace. My name is Brianna Bernhard, your hostess, and I am a new mom. I selfishly created this podcast to get some advice and inspiration from the moms in my community who are doing amazing things while raising their families. I've realized motherhood is hard, but knowing I'm not alone in this call makes all the difference, and I hope you feel refreshed as you listen. Welcome to the tribe. Welcome back to Mommispace. This is Bree, and today I am here with Ashley Mitchell. Ashley, welcome to the show.
Hi, Bree. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I was connected to you through my dear friend, Sarah Schmidt, now, not Biggs. I almost said Biggs.
Yes.
Who is a birth placement mother. And she just had so many good things to say about you, about the different organizations that you've been plugged into and have started. And so I just couldn't help but want to talk to you and hear your journey and all of that good stuff. But kind of before we dive in, would you just share a little bit about yourself, where you're located, what's family life look like, that kind of stuff?
Sure. I always appreciate having cheerleaders like Sarah that like to keep me connected with things that I need to know.
That's awesome.
Like you said, my name is Ashley and I live in Utah. I was born and raised here. And my husband and I just celebrated 9 years of marriage, and we have 2 children.
Aww.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
It's our longest marriage ever. We're feeling pretty excited about that.
So great.
And we have 2 children. We have our daughter is the oldest. She's 8, and we have a son that is 6.
Oh, wow.
So we're transitioning into kindergarten years and school and all of that. John wants the kids to play soccer, and so
Nice.
I'm like, do you know me? I am not a soccer mom, but whatever. Like the things we do for our kids,
Yeah,
right?
for sure. That's awesome. Very cool. And are you working at the moment? Like, what does that look like?
Yes. So I own 2 companies.
Mm-hmm.
Big Tough Girl is kind of my public platform.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also own a company called Lifetime Healing. And that is where we educate professionals in the adoption field, specifically all over the country, on offering post-placement care. I am also a birth mother. So I have a son that is going to be 12.
Wow.
And I placed him for adoption in 2006.
Okay.
And so a lot of my journey and stuff started when motherhood found me in that form.
Yeah.
But Lifetime Healing is our big national education
awesome.
piece.
Okay. Beautiful. Yeah, I'd love to hear more about both of those organizations, because I think they would be so helpful to so many mamas out there. But I'd love to start with your story. And yeah, I think you could just dive in right from there as far as being a birth mother. What did that look like for you? And then we can kind of talk about motherhood later in life for you, what that looked like and all that good stuff.
Okay. So I found myself in an unplanned pregnancy when I was 25, and I was not expecting motherhood to find me this way, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't grow up thinking, I'm going to be a birth mom when I grow up. That's not a conversation I had with my guidance counselor ever, but life experiences brought me to finding myself pregnant and unwed, and having to make impossible decisions for not just myself, but now for this unborn child. And it was an impossible time. It was just, there's so many pieces and factors we could talk about. And you can read all about my adoption story online. But one thing was that I had to make a decision of whether I felt like I was qualified at that time to raise him. I kind of laugh at that question now or that statement, because I don't think we're ever qualified to be parents.
That's so true.
Even in the very best of circumstances, I think we're all very underqualified for this calling of being a mother. But there were factors that went into that decision that I felt like would be safer and better for him, for my son. And so I picked an amazing family and I placed my son for adoption. They took him home 3 days after he was born from the hospital, and they took him home like he was their own son. And it wrecked me. It broke me in wonderful and unexpected and horrific ways, I guess. Wow. And so I spent the next 5 years, I call my infamous Jerry Springer years, of being very, very ignorant to the grief and trauma that I had experienced, and not having a freaking clue how to handle it and how to deal with it. And unfortunately, as we have seen in so many different aspects of our life, no one's talking about it.
Yeah.
Right? There's so much shame and embarrassment around some of these things that happen, and we can't talk about it, and no one's going to understand. And grief does that. Grief isolates us into a mindset that no one will understand, and we're the only people going through this.
That's so true. Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of seasons of motherhood in all forms that force women into isolation.
Yep.
And I think being aware of some of those things can really help keep us our head above water, I guess. So it took a really long time of very self-destructive behaviors and very heartbreaking choices that were extremely careless and damaging, not just to myself, but to everyone around me. As we know, our decisions don't just affect us as much as we would like to think this is my life and I can choose what I want. I think that there's such a bigger path that's affected by some of those choices. So when I finally, unfortunately for me, my, kind of my aha moment ended with me in a mental hospital, locked in a hospital for 5 days. And it was traumatic, but was definitely the best thing that's ever happened, because for the first time, I had someone basically shaking me and saying, this is what's happening to you. Wow. You're grieving your son. You've experienced trauma. You've been triggered over and over and over. And I was just like, why didn't anyone tell me? Wow. Why didn't anyone tell me that I was grieving and living with the consequences of the trauma? And no one was talking to me. And so I didn't know.
Yeah.
And you would think that it was so obvious, but a lot of these things that they're not that obvious when you're in it.
Totally. Yeah. When you're deceived, right? Like you don't know you're being deceived.
That's right.
Yeah.
When the fog is so thick, it's not that obvious. And I think there's not enough grace that we show each other for those that are in the throes of grief, because there's so much that they really don't know or even recognize that they're doing that's causing so much damage to people around them. So when I finally got help, I was like, oh, okay, I got this now. Like, and it was like over, like the light switch had gone on, and now I had a name to it. Now I was very clear on what was wrong. So now I could actually get the proper help and fix it.
Yeah. Wow.
And now I step into the healing years instead of the Jerry Springer years, and looks a lot better. It feels a lot better.
Wow.
So that kind of has led me to where I am now. And I met my husband in Nashville, Tennessee. All of this happened in Nashville. And he met me in the throes of all of this and has stood by me. And now here we are 9 years later with 2 kids and 12 years post-placement. And it's been an amazing journey, but I have learned so much about women and about motherhood that I'm very grateful for those lessons.
That's incredible. Wow. Now, what would you say has been, obviously, I'm assuming that you're having your 2 kids, later after placing, was probably a totally different experience, but could you share kind of what that transition looked like? Did you have to was there more healing that you found came up with going through that again? Like, what did that look like for you?
So when my husband and I found out that we were pregnant, I had a lot of triggers and trauma that came back up. And I had a very hard time connecting with that pregnancy. I've talked to a lot of women who have lost children and had babies after, and there's a little bit of a disconnect. I was keeping that very much at arm's length. And almost to the point that we were a couple of weeks from bringing her home, of going and having delivery at the hospital. And my husband was like shaking me, like, we are bringing this baby home. We need to get the crib put up. We need to get the car seats. We need to get the clothes. Cause I knew how to give birth. I'd done that.
Right.
But I didn't know how to bring a baby home from the hospital and be a mother.
Wow.
And that terrified me. Yeah. And so I had a really hard time emotionally connecting because I just kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. I had a hard time accepting that she was going to be mine and that I was going to get to keep her and bring her home. And so it was really hard. I kept myself very busy. I worked like 70, 80 hours a week, full pregnant. I mean, I went just full steam through the pregnancy. I remember having this overwhelming fear about having to call my mom and tell her that I was pregnant because I didn't know pregnancy in any form of celebration. I knew it as shame and a secret and something embarrassing and hurtful. I didn't know that we could like celebrate that we were going to have a baby. So there was those kind of specific things were very interesting that came up with our daughter. Yeah. I remember at the hospital, I was in labor for like 23 hours or something with her. And so it was very long and very emotional. And then I remember when she was born, I made John go with her everywhere, like followed the nurses to the nursery. And I was like, don't you take that baby. I will cut you if you take my baby from me. Like, because last time you took one to the nursery, it didn't come back. Yeah. Like I had that, and I laugh now because I was really a little bit crazy. But my husband
every
was like,
mom is. I can't even imagine. Yeah.
My husband's like, I just want to sit in here with you, and I was like, no, you follow that baby everywhere. Like I don't care. And then it was so funny because then almost exactly 2 years later, we had our son, and I was like, dude, I'm fine. Take him, give me all the drugs. I just want to sleep. Like I was over it. It was so strange.
So interesting. Wow.
But I experienced that a lot with that first pregnancy, a lot of that disconnect and that emotional fear and trauma that she wasn't going to come home.
Wow.
And I didn't know how to bring her home because I have never done that before.
Wow.
And so in some ways, even though I had given birth and was a mother before, I had never experienced motherhood in the daily grind. And that was terrifying. Yeah. So, and I think it's that way for all new mothers, but I was a new mother in a lot of ways because I had never done that part.
Yeah, totally.
So I brought her home and I turned 30 2 days after she came home.
Oh, wow.
And here we are. And she just turned 8. So we're surviving so far.
That's incredible. Wow. Okay. So now fast forward to, I'd love to kind of dive into talking about both of your businesses. Obviously this has become a passion of yours, and I so appreciate just the different stories I've heard from moms who have gone through something traumatic and have turned it into something really beautiful and helpful to other moms. I just am so in awe of that whole process. And I'd love to kind of hear, had business always been a passion of yours? Have you always known that's kind of what you're made for? And how did you kind of come up with these two different concepts for a business?
So I have worked for as long as I can remember. I've had a job of some kind, and worked all through high school and even after, but I wasn't really passionate about a whole lot, specifically and individually. And this is definitely not what I saw what my life was going to look like. But after I had my breakdown and really started to do some research, because now I was aware of how desperately I needed community and support. And so much of that love came from when my husband and I met. We were both working at the YMCA in East Nashville. And I fell in love with what community can do for people and how it can help and serve and inspire people. And we worked, I worked exclusively with the youth programs. And if these kids weren't at the Y, they were on the street or they were at home in really abusive relationships. And so the Y really became a place for them to come and just be, and in a safe environment. And I was lit up passionately by
so cool.
by community work. And so when I started to heal, or started to work on my own healing and personal journey through all of this, I started to do research. And I said, there's no way I'm the only person.
Yeah.
Now that the grief has started to lift, I started to do research, and there was nothing that matched my mindset, because I was very much coexisting with both the really ugly, but the really beautiful too. And I think that through personal experiences, I always talk about the 1s and 10s. So we have the ones over here that are still in so much pain and are hurting so bad and are so angry and so stuck in that. And then you have the 10s that are so delusional that everything's fine and they've never even dealt with anything and just act like everything is just rainbows all the time or whatever. But I was very much right in the middle of saying, I can have both, and I can love it and hate it at the same time. And that was not a common voice. It was almost non-existent. And I think that's true in a lot of areas in society for women.
Totally.
And so I said, well, fine, I'll just start my own group. And I didn't know anything about it. I seriously don't know anything about it. But I put the passion before the horse. So now I'm trying to go back and like relearn, like teach myself business, because I'm not, I didn't graduate from college. I barely graduated high school. Like, so I'm learning the business stuff, but my passion has kept me moving forward, that it was like, what a waste. And I'm sorry, I always get emotional when I talk about this, but what a waste of those experiences to not share. And if it's one person, so I just started to write, and writing became a huge healing tool for me, because I had to get it out of my head and out of my heart, because it would just spin and spin and spin and spin and spin. It would be easy. So I started writing mostly for myself, and with social media really starting to explode, with Facebook really exploding, and the original Blogspot blogs, were a really big deal. And so I started writing, and randomly people started reading and listening, and just over time developed into a community, so much like what I experienced at the Y, of a place that people could come as they were, in their brokenness and in their ugliness, and that it was okay that they were conflicted between the good and the bad. And that we were going to process together. And it started specifically just for birth mothers, for women who had placed their children for adoption. But I shared so much about grief and trauma and substance abuse and marriage and divorce, and that I started having so many women come to me and say, I have no connection to adoption, but I think I'm a big tough girl because of this and this, because that's the term we had used, adopted, for the women, was big tough girl. I'm a big tough girl. And so these women would message me, they say, I've survived cancer or divorce, or my spouse died, or my husband, my kids died, or we've been, dealing with all of this. But I think I'm a big tough girl too, because I love this, and it's made me who I am. And, all of these things. And so Big Tough Girl really just kind of transitioned into a platform for me to have a voice and share just about women, and just showing up every day. And that if you get out of bed, then I am celebrating the crap out of you. And if, you know what I mean? And just having something that the women, a title that they could embrace, that empowered them to just be whoever it is that they are right then in that season, because it looks different every season. I'm not ever going to be this Ashley ever again.
Yeah.
Next year, I am going to be a completely different individual. My mindset, my perspective, lessons learned, it's going to change me.
Yeah.
And so just trying to be present in who I am now. And then when we were running all these support groups for birth mothers, and I realized, I learned very quickly that even if I do it well, I'm not qualified to manage that kind of grief and trauma. And God bless social media.
Yeah.
It's can be like one of the most damaging things for real healing, because just because you can start a Facebook group doesn't mean you should.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
that's fair.
So I understand the need and draw for community, but what we wanted was to get people away from their screens and out of isolation, because social media isolates you unlike any tool I've ever seen, because it keeps you in bed alone in front of a screen.
Yep.
And when you turn your phone off, you're literally all alone.
Yeah.
And all of the heartache that you just shared online just leaves you more empty and alone at home. And so we decided, Sarah, my dear friend who you mentioned, she's the co-author of this curriculum. And so we wrote the nation's first post-placement curriculum and training. And so we're going to the adoption professionals and saying, you held our hand through the total destruction when we lost our children for adoption. You have an ethical responsibility to stand with us in the rebuild, and you need to host support groups for us.
Wow.
And they need to be in person, and they need to be every month. And so we train. And so that's what we wrote. And that's what the adoption professionals are doing nationwide, so that the women can come and meet and sit knee to knee in person and get support. And it's, I never think that mental health should be a luxury. It shouldn't be if you have money or have a therapist.
No,
if you need,
that's so good.
And connect with community, then we're providing it. Yeah. So that's a very long version of what we're doing.
Wow.
Yes.
So now, is Big Tough Girl and Lifetime Healing connected, or are they separate entities?
They're two different companies.
Okay.
I just run both. There's definitely a lot of crossover, just because when we talk a lot about our trauma and stuff, we talk about, so when I speak at events and things like that, it's under the Big Tough Girl platform.
Okay.
And when I train the agencies, it's under Lifetime Healing.
Okay. Beautiful. Now, if I'd like to just kind of, for a second, if there are people listening that want to figure out how to get in contact or like get involved somehow, is the easiest way just to visit the websites?
Yes. If you are a birth mother or an adoptive mother or an adoption professional, and you are looking for more information about support groups and what we're doing, you want to go to lifetimehealingadoption.com.
Perfect. Okay.
And if you're just looking to come and be inspired and have some great stuff shared on social media, I do some online workshops, and you can come to see where I'm speaking. If I'm in your area, you can go to bigtoughgirl.com.
Awesome. Okay. We will have both of those links available, as well as social media, on the show notes, and on when I post about this episode, we'll post that on Instagram as well. Okay, great. Wow, that's incredible. I'm just in awe, like, of how beautiful this, I just am so inspired by ashes being turned into something beautiful. So yeah, that's so wonderful. Okay, so I love to kind of ask moms, like, how do you stay inspired in the day-to-day, especially if you're a mom who works, and how do you take care of your heart in that process?
So I travel a lot, and I'm gone a lot, and that's brought on its own set of issues as a mother, and has brought on its own set of guilt and things like that. But I feel like one of the biggest things that keeps me inspired is that I am more than just mom. And I know that's not going to be received very well. So let me see if I can break that down.
No,
a little
I
bit.
appreciate that. That's,
I love my children, and they are amazing. But my kids don't light me up and get me out of bed every day and keep me motivated to put my best foot forward all day, every day. I think that there's so much really hard, exhausting, emotional things that come with motherhood that it's pretty hard to stay encouraged if that's all you've got.
That's fair.
And I think that
and it can become an identity, really.
Well, I was just gonna say, if that is your only identity, it's so easy to get lost in that. And it's not. You are an individual in this role of motherhood. You are a mother, but you are also still a person who has dreams and goals and things they want to accomplish. And I think one of the biggest reasons that mothers really get into some of those isolating seasons and grief and depression is because they don't have something else that identifies them except for motherhood. I think motherhood is amazing. Mm-hmm. I have given birth 3 times, the most incredible experiences, even in the most broken of experiences. Yeah. Bringing a child in the world is amazing. In the industry I'm in, I work with women all the time with infertility that would give anything to be able to be a mother. Wow. But even those that have adopted and are in the throes of motherhood are now still saying, motherhood sucks sometimes. Like, let's just be real about that.
Yeah, totally. Okay. That's so
And
good.
it's okay if you dislike your kids sometimes. Like, but again, these are conversations that people are ashamed. Like, oh my gosh, I can't say that out loud because then that makes me a bad mom. No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. And I think the biggest thing that has helped me, that keeps me going, is that I know that I am not just mommy. Mm. And it inspires me to get up, to get dressed, because if I'm just in mommy mode, I don't do anything to take care of myself. Yeah. I barely brush my teeth in the morning. Yeah. I mean, that role,
oh, girl, I feel you.
That girl keeps me that title keeps me very very unmotivated and isolated.
That's good. Yeah.
Now the time that I get with my kids is awesome, but just motherhood in general, and the grind and the keeping of the house and the making the lunches and the doing the homework and the baths and all the laundry and motherhood, this is separate than my kids. The job of motherhood does not inspire me.
Yeah.
Kids separately inspire me. Okay, so let's separate the two because they're not the same thing.
That's good. That's good.
And so really having something that is a passion of mine that I can go and do and be lit up and feel like I'm making change, then the time that I am at home, I feel like I am more present and more connected to my kids. I'm more relaxed and less stressed because I just get to be present, but I also know that I get to go again and give back. And that lights me up.
That's so good. Wow. And do you have like specific things that you do to like take care of yourself that are like just for you, or you get, time away or whatever that looks like? Do you have certain things that help you kind of not detach completely, but just, like tend to your heart?
Well, and I think that it's important to recognize that taking real time to take care of yourself and your heart is not the same thing as like binge watching on Netflix.
That's so good. Thank you for that.
Okay, because that is not self-care to me. I think that just isolates us more and makes us more depressed, and then it makes our mind spin on the fantasies of watching all these things that we don't really have or we're never going to have and things like that. So I think there's a huge difference between really caring for your mommy heart and completely avoiding all of the things that need to get done by locking yourself in your room and watching Netflix.
That's so good.
Now, I watch Netflix all the time. Yeah. I'm very guilty. I'm not saying that I don't do that.
No, for sure.
But I have very separate practices, meditation, study in scripture. I take like soul work classes online all the time. Like I take classes that specifically are to work through healing and grief and trauma, and the books that I read that speak specifically to keeping myself healthy mentally and emotionally, that are outside of just getting the pedicure and watching Netflix kind of thing. Yeah. And when I travel, because I travel quite a bit, I'm blessed that way because one of my favorite things is staying in a hotel room all by myself.
Oh, yes.
And so I take time when I travel to make sure I give myself one extra night before, either on the front end of my trip or the back end, that I am all alone and it's quiet. And if I need to sleep, I sleep. If I want to take a bath uninterrupted, I take a bath. If I want to go for a walk in a new city, I do that. Whatever, just to be just me, all by myself. That's something I get to kind of clock out a little bit and just lay in my big comfy hotel bed all alone. And order room service, and all those little things. But I just want to encourage the moms that for your self-care, do something that's actually caring for your emotional and mental state, not just not just something that allows you to kind of avoid things that are happening around you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's so good. I so appreciate that. Because I think that it's important to be specific too. And it's going to be different for everybody, right?
Sure.
But like I have found oftentimes like, getting caught in a TV show or whatever and being like, oh yeah, this is beneficial for me. But it's not always like, sometimes it's nice to break away in that sense. But I think it is important to realize like there are many different ways that we can tend to our hearts, and some of them aren't always super positive, Yeah.
And I think we have to recognize that those things, we always talk about, everything in moderation. Those all lead to addiction issues of their own, that we may not even realize are kind of, that just become our habitual cycles for, clocking out, that aren't necessarily feeding our soul or being healthy. And I think we need to have an equal amount of those things. It's okay to do a brainless activity every once in a while.
For sure.
But if we're not really feeding our souls either, we're not emotionally getting the help we need.
Yeah, totally. And that, it just speaks to like knowing yourself, knowing your needs. That's, I think, probably the most important thing before you even know how to tend to yourself. You have to know yourself. Yeah, that's so good. Okay, cool. So you mentioned guilt earlier, and I like to talk about this, not to glorify, but just to recognize, and like all women experience guilt. It's not just moms, but within motherhood, how do you kind of battle that?
So I do have a lot of guilt when I leave and travel, because it pulls me away from home, and having the guilt of, I'm so passionate about what I do, but I have a lot of guilt that it's not my kids. It's not motherhood. My kids are awesome, but motherhood itself, because I'm naturally designed, right? We're told that that's our natural, that's the greatest calling that has been bestowed upon women, is to be a mother. And I kind of go, well, is there something wrong with me? Because I'm not really connected to that title, like in the way that I have been raised to believe my whole life.
That needs to be challenged for sure, I think. Yeah. Like, that's important.
Yeah. And I think it's a real thing. And so I think the biggest thing for me is that I make sure 100% that when I come home and I'm not clocked into my work, that I'm 100% present with my kids. And what that has allowed me to do, literally, if you could look around my house and the garbage and the laundry and the cups of dishes and stuff that's piled on my nightstands, what I've been able to do is not put all of my value and focus on motherhood, but focusing on my kids. That's and my time with them, because I think they're separate. And so I've let go of the guilt of having a clean house and making sure all the laundry's done. I don't care about that stuff near as much as I care about making sure that I'm connecting with my kids, that even though I have to leave, that they know that I love them and that I will come back, and that our time together. And, my daughter, she's 8, and it's hard when I leave, and she cries, and that wrecks me. Like it makes me feel so guilty. But in some ways, we've become so much closer. My relationship with her has grown so much deeper because our time together is more connected than when I'm home. It's not, I got to unpack and clean the house and it's such a mess and I got to get caught up on all this stuff. I don't care. I let that go and reconnect with my kids. And that helps me battle off some of the feeling like I'm leaving them alone. And my husband's amazing and steps up as a role of a father and does what he's, needs to do. And we've got a system that works, but it's been hard. It's been really hard.
Wow. Well, I was just thinking even to like, you are setting an example to your kids, like what's possible, what they can do. And that kind of leads into my next question as far as legacy goes and what you want to leave for your kids. Because it's clear you're already setting that up. It sounds like that's an important thing that you think about. And, but yeah, I just am inspired by that. And especially with, just the things that are shifting and changing in our culture, in regards to being a woman, like showing that there's no boundaries, like as far as what you can do and accomplish. But yeah, I'd love to hear kind of what you think about when you hear the word legacy for your kids.
I specifically think about my daughter a lot because I work with women specifically. And I know that there's going to be some of that I hope that I inspire my son, to want to marry and be around women like that. But my daughter specifically, it is terrifying to think of raising children in this generation, in society, the way that it is. And it would be very easy to just lock my doors and stay at home and never want anyone to go anywhere or do anything, to try and shelter them. And obviously that's unrealistic, but I include my daughter a lot as I'm prepping to go on trips. She'll help me put swag bags together. And she talks about the big tough girls all the time. And she knows of them because we talk about them. They're all very present in our home and in our life. And I want her to be a strong woman. And I don't mean strong in a way that I'm so independent and I don't need anybody. And I want her to meet women where they are. I want her to serve. I want her to have a heart with intentional connection. And because that is so powerful to me, and to be authentic and real and honest about things she's struggling with, and how she can turn that around and inspire other people. And she has seen all of the women, countless women across the country that I've been able to serve and sit knee to knee with. And she gets it. I don't think we give our kids enough credit.
No, yeah.
And just because she's 8 doesn't mean that she can't understand the effect that some of these things are having on people. Totally. And so I try and include her in my work as much as possible so that she can, whether it's through, my legacy and she takes that over, or she goes off and creates her own, I want her to be inspired to serve. I 100%, more than anything else, more than career, more than anything, I want her to have a heart for service. Because I think it has, one of the things during my grief and isolation, when you're so focused on self-focus, they always say the number one thing, go serve other people, get out of your own way and quit focusing on you. And service has been a key thing to save me and my mindset. And I'm glad that I'm raising children that are watching it, that they know that I walk that talk, and that we're proud of that, and that we're glad that we've been blessed with opportunities to do that.
Wow. That is such a great piece of advice. Even just like, if you're in your own head, go love on somebody, go serve. Yeah. Wow. That's incredible.
Yes.
Good stuff. This has been so good. I don't want it to end. We'll probably have to have you back on to talk more about specific stuff, but this is such a great beginning.
Well, thank you for letting me come and talk about this.
Yes, absolutely. I have a couple more questions, just fun ones that I'd like to wrap it up with, if you're all right with that.
Yes.
Okay, so the first would be, do you have like a favorite product for yourself or for your kids that you feel like you couldn't live without at this point?
Oh my goodness. That is a good question. Besides my diet rockstar addiction that I have right now for caffeine, you know what? My kids, we love to do arts and crafts together. I love to paint. Physical expression, creative expression was a really big piece for me. And so we just have a huge bin that lives out in our garage that's full of Google eyes and pipe cleaners and construction paper, and they can go grab the bin and just create with their hands. And you know what? We really love to do that. The kids love to do that. And so that's kind of one of our go-to activities, really.
That's the best.
Because I can load up with really cheap product from Walmart, and they can just go to town and I can refill it once a month, and it's not a big deal. And they're entertained for hours.
It's true. We had one of those growing up, and it was like the best thing ever. I remember making like glue bookmarks, like with old pencil boxes. Oh, good times. That's awesome.
Yep.
And do you guys have a favorite holiday tradition with your family that you like to pull out each year?
Oh my goodness. It's interesting because we're just starting to kind of create our own as my big family traditions are starting to change, as they do with siblings and travel times and things like that. That we're just starting to kind of create our own. And Christmas obviously is my all-time favorite holiday. And so my husband growing up, they made Christmas lasagna on Christmas. Wow. And so now my husband does, it's just the four of us. We don't go to family parties or dinners on Christmas Eve. It's just the four of us at our tiny little kitchen table, and my husband makes a big lasagna Christmas dinner.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's fun. It's fun. We do that, and we watch, Christmas Story usually, or Christmas Vacation, and then we read the night before Christmas and go to bed. But we spend that one very specific night, just the four of us. There's always so much going on during the holiday. And so the night right before Christmas, we love to have it just the four of us, and we eat Christmas lasagna, and it's awesome.
Oh, that's so cute. I love that. First time hearing Christmas lasagna, so that's kind of fun.
Yeah, it was kind of always random. I'm like, lasagna, really? Like, not a big ham or cheesy potatoes or lasagna. So it's awesome. So I decorate the table, and he does all the cooking, and it's really fun, just the four of us. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Okay, and then this will be kind of crazy. You've already given so much advice already. But do you have like one piece of advice you'd give to a new mom?
Oh, to brand new mothers. I really think the biggest advice that I can give you is don't feel guilty if you need 5 minutes for yourself. And it's okay to want other things in your life. I know as a new mother, you're going to want to soak every second in, because it does not last long. Those seasons of those new babies do not last very long. But I encourage you, as you're thinking about your future and moving forward, to find things that light you up, that make you feel like an individual. And do not get overwhelmed by all of the perfect baby mommy things.
Yes.
Okay. All of that is crap.
Yeah.
I remember when we had Ty, when we brought her home, we bought all the things and had all the things. And by the time we had Ollie, I needed formula, burp cloths, and diapers. And that was about it. So because it can get very overwhelming. You come into motherhood in your way, not anybody else's.
That's so good. Yes. Yes, and amen. Love it. Ashley, thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me. I cannot wait to share this with all the mamas in our community.
Thank you. I'll be excited to come back and continue our conversation.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. It was such a pleasure to have you listen in. If you'd like more information about this guest and other guests, you can check that out on Facebook and Instagram at Mommispace. And you can also email me at mommispace@gmail.com if you want more details or have any questions or would just like to get in touch. I'm always looking for new connections. Also, it would mean so much if you could leave us either a rating or review or both on iTunes. This just gets the word out about the show. It's a way that we can get more connected with more mamas out there. And it really helps me out as I am doing this on my own. And sometimes I just need a little lift up, y'all. It's good to hear from you that way. Thank you so much again for tuning in. I hope you have an amazing week. Remember, you are loved, you are enough, and you are doing your very best. See you next week, Mama.